Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 410, The Right Place at the Right Mime. The episode begins with Ash back at his house in Pallet Town after his journey in the Hoenn region. We don't see Ash right away though. Instead, we see Mr. Mime and Ash's mom. Mr. Mime was busy sweeping the house, while Ash's mom was talking to herself about how happy she was that Ash had returned home, while washing the dishes and thinking about what she was going to cook for dinner that night. She then looked over to see Mr. Mime going from sweeping the kitchen to the living room, and when she looked in the living room, she saw that Ash had left his backpack on the couch. She wished that Ash would have stayed at home, but even though she really wanted him to continue telling stories about his journey in the Hoenn region, he had instead went off to go to Professor Oak's lab. Just then, Ash's mom's thoughts were interrupted by a ring at the doorbell, and she asked Mr. Mime to answer the door for her. When Mr. Mime did go answer the door, he was shocked to see a Bulbasaur, a Combuskin, and a Munchlax looking up at it, smiling happily. Ash's mom heard Mr. Mime gasp, so she came out of the kitchen, wondering why a fucking Bulbasaur, Munchlax, and Combuskin were at her door, thinking that maybe a trainer owned them. Just then, May popped her head through the door and greeted Ash's mom. That's right, May and her Pokemon were in Pallet Town. Meanwhile, we then see Professor Oak's laboratory, where Misty, Max, and Tracy were examining the three starter Pokemon, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, which were soon going to be handed out to young Pokemon trainers that were about to begin their journey. Basically, it was that time of year again, and starters were being handed out to newly turned 10-year-olds in Pallet Town. Misty fed a Squirtle, while Max was simply just admiring all three of the starter Pokemon, commenting that they were very cute, and he tried to pet the Squirtle that Misty had just fed. The Squirtle had just started digging into its food, and when Max tried to pet it, it started bawling its eyes out in fear because it was so young and wasn't used to humans yet. Max gets startled by Squirtle's crying and steps backward, apologizing to it, leading the Squirtle to try its best to wipe its tears from its eyes, still sad, as it tries to go back to eating its food. Tracy, seeing that Max was kind of freaked out by Squirtle, told Max not to worry because Squirtle wouldn't hurt him at all. Max, however, barely paid attention to what Tracy was saying. Instead, he was focusing on Tracy's drawings, because this whole time, Tracy had been in the lab sketching a picture of Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, which Max was very impressed by, commenting that Tracy must have been one of a kind, being both an assistant to Professor Oak and an artist. So basically, a researcher and an artist too, although Tracy told Max that Oak was once an artist as well, so he wasn't the only one who was an artist and a researcher at the same time. Max was intrigued by Oak being an artist, and asked when this was, leading Tracy to reveal that it was back in Professor Oak's youth. Tracy then explains that he was also a Pokemon watcher, which was someone who watched Pokemon and essentially researched them and sketched his findings, so being an artist and a researcher kind of went hand in hand. This led Max to state that if being a Pokemon watcher was related to researching, then Tracy must have been a great Pokemon watcher to have been able to become Professor Oak's assistant, and wondered what it would be like to watch Pokemon all day and sketch them like Tracy did. And he had a vision of this, as we see him by a tree, watching and sketching a Bayleaf, Marill, Beautyfly, Seedot, Ralts, Shroomish, Wynot, and Whismur. Once Max had snapped out of his little vision there, Misty noted that all the Pokemon looked pretty tired and bored after listening to all of Tracy and Max's talking, and suggests that Tracy should recall them into their Pokeballs to give them a rest, and Tracy agreed, also complimenting Misty's Azurill that was on her shoulder. Right as Tracy was about to recall the Pokemon into their Pokeballs, though, taking out the Pokeballs, Max suddenly interrupted, asking if he could be the one to call them back instead. Tracy didn't see the harm in this, so he gave Max Squirtle, Charmander, and Bulbasaur's Pokeballs, and Max was able to successfully call Bulbasaur and Charmander back to their Pokeballs. However, the baby Squirtle got frightened, not understanding where Charmander and Bulbasaur went, because he didn't quite understand the concept of the Pokeball yet. So when Max tried to call Squirtle back, Squirtle ran off crying, thinking that going into the Pokeball might have fucking murdered its friends or some shit. So, as Squirtle ran around crying, Max tried to chase after it all around the lab. But just then, May had come up the stairs of the lab to greet Max, Misty, and Tracy after Oak had explained that they were up there. And the Squirtle, who was still crying, instantly jumped into the arms of May. Just then, Ash's mom came up as well, because she had come to the lab with May. Because originally, she had been the one to be like, yo, everyone's at Oak's. And then Oak was like, oh yeah, they're up the stairs. But anyways, the important thing was that the crying Squirtle had jumped into May's arms, and Ash's mom had arrived as well. Max was extremely shocked to see his sister, because he thought that she had went back to Petalburg after they visited Birch. As for May's reaction to Squirtle jumping into her arms, still crying, May proceeded to scold Max, assuming that Max must have really upset the Squirtle, and scolded him, saying that he needed to be gentler with Squirtle, and just Pokemon in general, if he wanted to be a trainer one day. Just then, Ash, Professor Oak, and Professor Birch come up, and Birch greets May. May was confused as to why Max was even in the lab in the first place, and why Professor Birch was there as well, since she thought that Max and Birch were still in Little Root, where May had left them. Although Max explained that Professor Birch had brought him to Professor Oak's lab. Hearing this, May apologizes if Max had caused Birch any trouble, but Birch stated that he had willingly brought Max with him. It was his pleasure, because he wanted a companion to ride with him in his Jeep on the way to Oaks, so he was more than happy to bring Max. May then thanks Professor Birch for taking her brother along with him, and Ash then greets May, asking how she was doing. Still a bit shocked to see her. Suddenly, though, Ash's Muck shows up and comes up behind Professor Birch, smothering him, as a way of giving him a hug. This startles everyone, and Ash instructs Muck to get the fuck off of Professor Birch's back, but Muck just shakes its head. It was having too much fun. Ash's mom and Oak were embarrassed, though Oak had a little bit of joy seeing Birch getting smothered by Muck, since he was happy to see someone else getting smothered by Muck, aside from himself for once, although he did feel a bit of sympathy at the same time. Ash's mom then offers to make some afternoon tea for everyone once Muck got off Professor Birch's back eventually, and everyone happily accepts and heads downstairs to the lounge area of the lab with the couches to relax. Ash, Misty, Tracy, and May were sitting on one couch, while Max and Ash's mom were sitting on stools, and Birch and Oak were sitting on the other couch, with Muck still trying to smother Birch a little bit. Anyways, while everyone was drinking tea, Ash officially announced that he was planning to partake in the battle frontier, leading May to ask what that was. So Ash explained that it was a challenge that was set all across Kanto, with several different frontier brains to battle against. Specifically, 6 in 6 different areas, with a 7th frontier brain in a 7th area, only being unlocked once you defeated the first 6, and each frontier brain would give you a frontier symbol if you were successful against them, much like how gym leaders gave out badges if you beat them. May thought that the battle frontier sounded pretty interesting, and Ash agreed, getting very excited to participate in it, as he envisioned the silhouettes of the 6 main frontier brains, aside from the last 7th one, Tucker, Annabelle, Greta, Noland, Spencer, and Lucy, all being spread out across the map of Kanto. Ash's mom was amazed that Ash was already planning another journey and was very proud of her son for constantly staying on top of things. She also revealed to Ash that May was planning to enter Pokemon contests in the Kanto region, since there were contest halls in Kanto as well. Although Birch almost couldn't talk because Muck was close to fully smothering him, Birch suggested that May should definitely take a journey around Kanto and do some contests, since there were a lot of rare Pokemon in Kanto that were super rare to find in Hoenn, so it would be a lot easier for May to find them in Kanto and add some new Pokemon to her team. May became excited at the prospect of competing in Pokemon contests with rare Pokemon, as Professor Oak simply drank some tea, as Professor Birch was almost fully smothered by this point. Ash, realizing that both he and May would now be journeying through Kanto, suggested that he and May travel together again, and May happily agreed, with Pikachu pleased as well. Ash then declares that he and May would be leaving tomorrow to resume their journey now in the Kanto region. Ash's mom was shocked at first and a bit pissed off, since her son was leaving way too fast, but she remembered that her son had always been like this, constantly going on adventure after adventure. He just couldn't sit still, so she should have expected that Ash wouldn't have stayed at home for long. And she was still proud of him for going on a journey. Max then butts in to Ash and May's conversation, eagerly asking if he could come back on their journey as well, leading May to state that she and Ash had no problem with him coming, but he would only be allowed to come if their parents, Caroline and Norman, agreed. Max was sad, thinking that maybe his parents wouldn't agree, but Ash told him that he and May would plead very hard to Norman and Caroline when they saw them next to ask them to let Max come with them. Max was happy, as was Ash's mom, pleased that Ash was able to make such good friends, and declares that she was going to make lunch, and asked what everyone wanted. So May, Max, and Ash all jumped in, telling her what they wanted, and she agreed to make everything. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were in the bushes just outside of Professor Oak's lab, planning on breaking inside of Oak's lab to steal all the Pokemon inside, including Ash's, and they were also planning on stealing Pikachu as well. They cheered as they used their binoculars to see inside the lab window from the bushes, looking for the perfect time to strike, as Wobbuffet popped out its Pokeball and cheered as well. Anyways, back in the lab, Birch, Oak, and Ash's mom were the only ones that were still in the lab, with Ash's mom cleaning up all the dishes and teacups left over from the lunch they ate in the lounge room, because Max, May, and Ash had left the lab so that they could go and see Ash's other Pokemon from his previous adventures. Ash really wanted to greet them because it had been a while. As for Misty and Tracy went, we don't know yet. But anyways, while Ash's mom was collecting all the dishes and teacups to wash them, Oak thought that he saw Ash's mom having a troubled look on her face, so Oak assumed that Ash's mom must have been worried about Ash leaving again on another journey so soon after coming back, although Ash's mom said that she expected Ash to leave, and she knew that Ash, as a trainer, had a duty to constantly go on a journey, so she couldn't fault him for it, and she was proud that Ash was constantly going on journeys. It was just hard for her to not see her son often, but she clarified that she would do whatever she could to support Ash whenever he came back home, and would enjoy his company whenever she had the opportunity to have it. Oak comforted Ash's mom, saying that he too always expected Ash to leave, but admitted that Ash's mom was strong for always supporting her son no matter what. Meanwhile, in Oak's fields by the lab, Ash, May, and Max were trying to find all of Ash's Pokemon amongst the many Pokemon who lived at Ash's lab, because they wanted to greet them, obviously. Much to May and Max's amazement, the first Pokemon of Ash's that they came across was his Snorlax, who was sleeping, but the second that it heard Ash, May, and Max approach, it woke up and happily greeted May, Max, and Ash, waving at them, with Snorlax particularly happy to see Ash, because it had been a long time since he had seen his trainer. May then realizes that her Pokemon would probably want to greet Snorlax, especially Munchlax, who she found out through the Pokédex was Snorlax's pre-evolution, so she decided to send all her Pokemon out to greet Snorlax, and sure enough, Munchlax and Snorlax were especially happy to see each other. Ash then realizes that May had only sent out Combuskin, Bulbasaur, and Munchlax, and curiously, those were the only Pokemon that showed up at the door with her near the beginning of the episode. So Ash asked where the fuck Beautyfly and Skitty were, leading May to reveal that she left them at home in Petalburg City. Specifically, she left Beautyfly with her mom, since as soon as her mom saw her Beautyfly again, she immediately fell in love with it and wanted Beautyfly to stay with her. Probably because, Beautyfly reminded her of her and Norman's honeymoon. As for Skitty, May showed Skitty her father's greenhouse where he kept his Pokemon, and it really loved sleeping there and just hanging out there, so May figured that it would enjoy staying at the greenhouse more than being with her. Ash was kind of sad that he wouldn't get to see Beautyfly and Skitty, but as long as they were happy, he was happy. Ash and May then talked about all their memories with Beautyfly and Skitty, but this conversation was cut short when Ash, May, and Max suddenly heard a loud rumbling sound behind them, and when they turned around to find out the source, they figured out that it was Ash's Pokemon running up to greet Ash after a long time of not seeing him. Specifically, all the Pokemon stampeding towards him were the majority of his 30 Tauros, along with Bulbasaur, Totodile, Cyndaquil, Bayleaf, Heracross, Noctowl, Kingler, and Phanpy. Man, I love when there's actually continuity in the show. Moments like this actually pay off. We spent like hundreds of episodes building up these teams, and now we get to see these teams of Pokemon again, both from Kanto and Johto. But anyways, while the majority of the Pokemon stopped at Ash, Max, and May's feet, the Tauros were too excited and instead ran right past Ash, stampeding him. So pleased to see him. Because of Ash being stampeded, he accidentally ended up on one of the Tauros' back and was carried away as the Tauros continued on through Oaks Fields. May and Max were too amazed by Ash's Pokemon to care about what was happening to Ash right now, although Bayleaf was immensely scared for its trainer. While all this was happening, May's Pokemon greeted all of Ash's Pokemon, specifically Bulbasaur. May's Bulbasaur was very happy to reunite with Ash's Bulbasaur as the two of them shook vines. Pikachu was also very happy to see Phanpy in particular, pleased to see that it was doing alright, and greeted Phanpy by playfully shocking it with a Thunderbolt, which made Phanpy happy. Bayleaf could not take the despair it was feeling seeing Ash in danger, and ran after Ash, trying to save him, but it could not catch up to the Tauros at all. Just then, though, Tracy and Misty, having heard the Tauros stampede and wanting to meet up with Ash, Max, and May to see how they were getting along with all the Pokemon, showed up and saw the Tauros stampede, so Tracy sent out his Meryl and had to use water gun to push the Tauros back and calm them down, which stopped the Tauros from moving, so Bayleaf was able to quickly grab Ash with its Vine Whip from Tauros's back. Ash then thanks his Bayleaf, who snuggles up to Ash in response, and Ash hugs it, right as Misty and Tracy run up, closely followed by a Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur from earlier, while Misty was still holding her Azurill. Misty then asks Ash if he was alright, and Ash confirms this, but states that he was a little surprised at how strong and fast and wild his Tauros were. Misty teases Ash, saying that Pokemon took after their trainers, implying that Ash was a wild one as well, and she winked when she said this. Damn, I still see some flirting, Misty, alright. Anyways, Misty didn't want to make her affection towards Ash too obvious, so she teased him for not being able to handle his Tauros, when suddenly May and Max came running up with the rest of Ash's Pokemon to check on Ash and make sure he was alright as well. And upon seeing May, the baby Squirtle that she had held before happily ran up and jumped into her arms again. May had no objections, since she found Squirtle extremely cute and hugged it tightly. Tracy then revealed to Ash that Bulbasaur in particular had been eagerly awaiting Ash's return and had been hyping up all the other Pokemon, constantly telling them that he was sure Ash would show up any day now. Tracy then suggests that Ash should introduce his new home Pokemon to all his other ones, and Ash agreed, sending them out. So Swallow, Grovyle, Corphish, Torkoal, and Glalie all came out of their Pokeballs. Max was amazed by seeing so many Pokemon at once, and the fact that Ash had that many Pokemon collected, although May reminded Max that this wasn't even all of Ash's Pokemon, as he had a Charizard at the Charizard Valley, and a Squirtle that was on its own with a group called the Squirtle Squad as well. We then see little moments of all of Ash's home Pokemon interacting with his older ones, Pokemon that you would think would get along. For example, Corphish and Kingler, both being crab-based Pokemon, shook claws. Totodile, who loved dancing just like Glalie, danced with Glalie. Cyndaquil, also being a fire type, happily greeted Torkoal. Noctowl, also being a flying type, happily greeted Swallow. And Pikachu and Phanpy still played together. Grovyle and Heracross, being the mature battlers of each team, shook each other's hands too. Meanwhile, while Ash, May, Max, Misty, and Tracy were talking and watching all the Pokemon, Team Rocket was spying on them and all the Pokemon from some bushes. And seeing all the Pokemon together gathered, they planned to capture every last one of them in one go, and Wobbuffet popped up his Pokeball to agree with this, so they put their plan into action, coming out of the bushes, disguised as people from a show called Pokemon Sunday, a fake news show about interviewing people. Jesse James and Meowth were interviewers, and Wobbuffet was the cameraman. After introducing themselves, Jesse stated that they had come to interview Ash after his amazing performance in the Evergrande Conference, making Ash blush. Thinking that people genuinely wanted to interview him, May and Max were excited as well, and they added their own insights when Ash explained about his time at the Hoenn League. While Ash, Max, and May were explaining, however, Wobbuffet was about to scream its name, just because it was weird like that, but James suddenly jumped over and covered Wobbuffet's mouth, so it didn't reveal itself. Meowth quickly jumped in front of Wobbuffet as well, and not wanting to risk Wobbuffet revealing himself again, Meowth suggested that they get a big group shot of Ash, May, Max, Misty, Tracy, and all their Pokemon, so that they could all be on TV. Max became excited at the thought of being on TV, while May checked her hair, and Misty blushed at the thought of being a television star. And she had a whole bunch of fantasies about perhaps becoming more famous than her sisters. Tracy saw Misty blushing, so he teased her for it, which only made Misty blush even more. So, with that, Ash, May, Max, Misty, Tracy, and all their Pokemon will line up for a group shot, although James requests that they back up a little bit to get fully into view of the camera. everyone obliges, oblivious to Team Rocket's plan, because when they backed up, they ended up falling into one of Team Rocket's pitfalls that they had dug while no one was watching. Noctowl and Swallow simply try and fly up to escape the hole, but Team Rocket thought of this, and they quickly covered the hole with a net to prevent escape. Ash tries to have Pikachu destroy the net, seeing how everyone was worried, having Pikachu use Thunderbolt on it, but the attack does nothing against the shockproof net. Misty questioned what the fuck was even going on, because they still didn't know that Team Rocket were the ones behind the pitfall trap, because, they still thought Team Rocket was actually part of that interviewing crew, leading Team Rocket to come over top of the hole and peer inside, reciting their new motto and taking off their disguises, revealing themselves. James Chimeco even joined the motto as well. Anyways, as soon as the motto was done, Misty asked why the fuck Team Rocket was still following everyone around after all this time, leading Jessie to get mad that Ash and the gang didn't even acknowledge Team Rocket's new motto at all. But before Jessie could take out her anger on Ash and the gang, Ash simply ordered Grovyle to slice through the net, covering the hole using a leaf blade, since the net was only shockproof, not fucking other attack proof, I don't know. Team Rocket were terrified that the net failed, as Swallow and Noctowl were the first ones to escape the hole, flying out. While the rest of the gang was climbing out of the hole, Jessie demanded an explanation from Meowth as to why the gang was able to escape the net and destroy it, since she specifically requested a net that was resistant to all attacks, which revealed that Meowth was the one who designed the net. Anyways, Meowth embarrassingly explained that he thought a Pikachu-proof net would be enough, and he didn't worry about all the other Pokemon, not thinking they would be a problem, and admitted that he really just wanted to save money by only making an electric-proof net, as opposed to one that was resistant to all attacks. While Jessie continued to scream at Meowth, the rest of the gang and the Pokemon managed to crawl out of the hole. Team Rocket was obviously pissed off at this, but James remembered they had Plan B and told Meowth to initiate Plan B, and Meowth obliged, pressing a button on a remote that he had, which caused the ground to start shaking and a whole bunch of dust to appear. When the dust cleared, a huge purple robot with arms that were able to suck shit stood over Ash and the gang, while Team Rocket hopped inside, laughing as they turned on the robot's sucking arms, happily declaring that this plan would work, introducing the robot as a suck of a punishment robot. They then turned on the robot's sucking arms, which generated a vacuum that almost pulled in Totodile and Charmander from its force. Misty and Tracy were able to keep hold of their Azurill and Meryl respectively, but Ash obviously couldn't hold all of his Pokemon at once. He could only grab hold of Pikachu, so a lot of his Pokemon were being sucked in, but thankfully Bulbasaur was able to keep its ground and use a Vine Whip to pull all the Pokemon that were getting sucked in back to the ground, which impressed May's Bulbasaur. Despite Bulbasaur's efforts, Team Rocket still tried to suck several of the Pokemon in, which made the baby Squirtle extremely terrified that it would be sucked in as well, as it started to cry in May's arms, but May held onto it tight, promising it that she would not let it get sucked in. Inside the robot, Team Rocket was frustrated that they weren't able to actually capture any of the Pokemon, so James told Meowth to boost the suckers up to full power. But Ash then got an idea, seeing that Snorlax wasn't even flinching from the suckers due to how heavy it was, and he told Snorlax to attack the robot and knock it over, and Snorlax obliges, sending the robot crashing to the ground with a tackle attack, also knocking Team Rocket out of the robot in the process. With their robot now fucked, they couldn't rely on that to capture Pokemon anymore, so they decided to send out their Cacnea and Seviper instead. And was hellbent on getting even just Pikachu, even if they didn't get the rest of the Pokemon. Although Cacnea, of course, hugged James first, prickling him. Just then, Oak, Birch, and Ash's mom came out of the lab, having heard everything that was going down, because, obviously they would hear a mech crashing down to the ground and all that, and they wanted to see what was going on. Birch was the first one to notice Team Rocket, instantly recognizing them, and Oak recognized them as well, disappointed that they were still up to no good. And Birch, totally against Team Rocket trying to steal Pokemon, as usual, declares that he was going to deal with them himself, and pulls out a Pokeball, presumably with either a Mudkip, Torchic, or Trico, but Ash's mom stops him, advising him to just let Ash and the gang handle the whole thing, since they had battled Team Rocket many times before, and beat them every time, so they could obviously do it again, and could likely beat them easier than Birch could anyways. Also, Ash's mom knew that Ash and the gang would likely want revenge on Team Rocket for trying to steal their Pokemon, so with that, Birch, Oak, and her stood by while Ash and the gang took action, as Jessie started the battle, telling her Seviper to use Poison Tail, although Ash told his Bulbasaur to use Vine Whip, which grabbed hold of Seviper's tail and sent it right at Seviper's face, so Seviper was essentially forced to hit itself with its own tail, thanks to the Vine Whip. May's Bulbasaur was once again impressed by Ash's Bulbasaur, and this motivated it to attack Cacnea and counter Cacnea's pin missile when it went for it by using a Petal Dance, which knocked back the pin missile towards Cacnea. So, Cacnea was damaged from both the pin missile of its own and the Petal Dance. Much to May's Bulbasaur's delight, Ash's Bulbasaur was impressed by this Petal Dance. Jessie was angry at Seviper and Cacnea for failing, ordering them to get their act together, as Jessie told Seviper to use a bite attack, and James echoed Jessie's sentiment, telling Cacnea to use a Needle Arm. Ash declared that he was going to finish Team Rocket off right now, and told his Bulbasaur to use Solar Beam, and once Bulbasaur had charged this up, this smashed straight into Cacnea and Seviper, sending them blasting off without Jessie, James, and Meowth. Jessie, James, and Meowth realized that they were fucked now that they didn't have Pokemon, even though they could have just fucking used Chimecho or Dustox, but I don't know, they were clearly freaked out by the sheer power of the Solar Beam, and tried their best to sneak away. But Tracy and Misty noticed this, and the two of them team up using their Meryl and Azurill, both using Water Gun, to send Team Rocket smashing into their ruined robot, which damaged the robot even more, and injured Team Rocket. Then, May had her Combuskin use a Fire Spin to burn Team Rocket and damage the robot even more, and Ash had Pikachu fire a full-power Thunderbolt to send Team Rocket blasting off, and they eventually ended up landing next to their Pokemon, and the Thunderbolt also managed to destroy the robot as well. Ash Ash and the gang and Oak all celebrated the victory against Team Rocket, while Birch and Ash's mom admired the flaming remains of the robot, with Birch admitting that he was surprised that Ash and the gang were actually able to deal with Team Rocket so quickly, but he admitted that Ash's mom was right to leave it up to them. And Ash's mom essentially brags to Birch, saying that she told him so. Ash and the gang and Birch and Ash's mom and Oak then return to the lab, and Tracy successfully recalls Bulbasaur and Charmander into their Pokeballs. But when he tries to recall Squirtle into his Pokeball, the baby Squirtle absolutely refused and started crying as it jumped straight into May's arms. Once again, seeing how attached Squirtle was to May, Birch suggested that maybe May should take Squirtle as her own Pokemon, and asked Professor Oak what he thought. Oak thought it was a good idea, but wanted to make sure May did as well, so he officially asked May if she would like to take care of Squirtle, and May obviously said that she would, and thanked Professor Oak as Professor Oak and Tracy handed May Squirtle's Pokeball. It was officially her Pokemon now. Yay! However, this was actually a bit of a trade, because while May was getting Squirtle, in exchange, Oak asked if May would mind leaving her Bulbasaur at his lab, because he could use another Bulbasaur to keep order of the place, so that Bulbasaur could essentially, or Ash's Bulbasaur, could essentially pass on its knowledge to another Bulbasaur, so that they could cover more ground and really help out the lab. May accepted, which made Oak overjoyed at the fact that he had yet another Pokemon to take care of at the lab, with May reasoning that she was leaving Bulbasaur at the lab because it could learn a lot from Ash's Bulbasaur, since it clearly admired it, and if her Bulbasaur learned a lot from Ash's, then if it came back to her eventually, then it would be even stronger. Ash then decides that if he was going on a new journey to participate in the Battle Frontier, he should probably leave some slots open on his team for when he inevitably would catch some brand new Pokemon to add to his team. So he decided to leave Torkoal and Glalie at Oak's lab as well. I know, it's so unfortunate. Like, why Torkoal and Glalie, man? Glalie's like your newest Mon. We barely got to see it. And Torkoal barely got to do anything at all. But, anyways, Oak joked that the lab was going to be pretty crowded now, but was more than happy to let all of those Pokemon stay at his lab. So May's team was now officially Combuskin, Munchlax, and Squirtle, and Ash's team was officially Pikachu, Rovile, Corphish, and Swellow. Next, Professor Oak decided to give May and Ash a parting gift, which was a brand new Kanto Pokédex for each of them, which had information on some Hoenn Pokemon as well that had recently been discovered in Kanto. So basically, they weren't just Hoenn exclusive, and it also had updated information on just Kanto and Johto Pokemon as well, just overall an upgraded Pokédex. So May and Ash gratefully took those new Pokédexes, thanking Oak. As Oak and Birch continued to talk about the Pokédex, Max got a little jealous that May and Ash got something, and he didn't, wishing he could have a Pokédex as well. But then, Tracy decided to give him a parting gift as well, something that he wanted even more than a Pokédex, which was an updated Pokénav, which had data on the Battle Frontier and the locations of the 6 Frontier facilities that weren't secret. Max was super excited, and immediately started looking at all the new data on the updated Pokénav, and was able to find out that the nearest Frontier facility was near Cerulean City. So he suggested that they head there first. Misty revealed that she was supposed to be heading back to Cerulean City to resume her gym leader duties as soon as possible, so Ash suggested that Misty should accompany him, May, and Max, at least on the way to Cerulean City, and Misty agreed. So Misty was going to be part of the gang for a little bit again. Yay! With that, Ash and the gang were just going to go back to Ash's house quickly so that he could grab his things, and then they would set off. But before Ash and the gang left the lab, Birch said a good luck poem to them, but Oak corrected Birch on how to properly say the poem he just said, since he was the poem expert, having done haikus and other poems for a long time, way longer than Birch. Ash and the gang and Pikachu were very excited to get on with their journey, so they quickly left the lab after saying goodbye to Birch and Oak, and they went back to Ash's house so Ash could grab his things, and then they said goodbye to Ash's mom and Mr. Mime. Ash's mom told Ash to make sure he was alright, and requested that May, Max, and Misty do everything they can to make sure Ash doesn't get into trouble, and Max assures Ash's mom that so long as Max was by Ash's side, he would do everything in his power to make sure Ash didn't get into trouble. And with that, Ash and the gang were about to leave, but just then, Ash's Phanpy ran up all the way from Oak's lab, getting Ash's attention. Pikachu was overjoyed to see Phanpy and hopped on its head to play with it, and as Phanpy smiled at Ash, this made him realize that Phanpy wanted to come along with Ash on his Battle Frontier journey. Ash asked Phanpy if this was the case, and Phanpy nodded. So, with that, Ash officially made Phanpy a part of his team. So his team was now Pikachu, Swellow, Corphish, Rovile, and Phanpy. I have to say, this was a really good choice by the writers, because Phanpy got ripped the fuck off. He didn't even get to evolve, and he was only there, like, at the end of Johto. Now, if only they didn't rip off Glalie and Torkoal, but I digress. Now, with Phanpy as part of the team, Ash and the gang truly could leave, as Ash's mom wishes Ash luck in his new journey. After a while of walking, Ash and the gang had made their way out of Pallet Town and were walking towards Cerulean City, about to pass by Mount Moon, when suddenly Brock approached them and revealed that he had already seen his family in Pewter City. So, now he had no reason to be separated from the gang, so just like that, he officially rejoined the gang. So we officially have our biggest gang we've ever had before. Ash, Brock, Max, May, and Misty. Everything was back to normal, but we're now heading off on a new journey. Yay!